Hi, this is Julie Hanson. I teach at San Diego Miramar College, Grossmont College, SDSU, and UCSD, and I am here to tell you what I have learned about the gradebook in Canvas. And you're going to notice that I also love PowerPoint. So the first thing that I do is at the beginning of the semester, and while I'm getting everything squared away, I just like to hide the total that is in the gradebook from my students. So how do I do that? I go to Settings, then I click More Options, which is now it's saying fewer options because I have the more options, but it says more options here. So I click it, and then I just select the box that says hide the totals. It seems kind of like counterintuitive, but I hide the totals by selecting the box. When I'm ready to show the totals, I just deselect that and my students can see the total. Okay, so I do that after I get everything all squared away. All right, what's the other thing? I move my total column to the front. We're not sure what happened to my dinosaur. He turned upside down. So the way that I do that, this is an example. So my total column is on the very right-hand side of my grade book. So I use these three dots right over here, and I just click move to the front. So I click the three dots. That's the first thing. Second, I move it to the front. Now you can see that once I've done this, my total column is right next to my student names right up front. Now this doesn't affect how the students see it. It's just that it makes it easier for me to kind of manage to see who's doing well in my class, which I'll bring up some more points in a minute. Okay, so, and you can also see here that I have a grade next to the percentage points for the total. So you may be asking me, well, how'd you do that? Well, the way that I do that is under the settings, there's a box that says enable course grading scheme. And then once you click that box, it'll say view the grading scheme. And then this little box will come up over here, and you can see that, well, I have a pretty standard grading scheme for this class. You can have a different grading scheme for each class. You can make up your own if you don't like the one that's the default. There will always be one there. But for example, some places I teach, I can award a plus or minus grade. Other places I can't. So in this case, I've just got a pretty straight grading scale. 0 to 60% is an F, 60 to 70 a D, and so on and so forth. But if I want to change it, I can just select another scheme or manage this one by clicking the grading scheme, and then that's how these will come up here. So it bases it on my grading scheme. Okay, so the next thing that I do in some classes, I don't do this in every class, but depending on how I'm feeling for the semester or what kind of class I'm creating, this is my MIS class, I will have assignment groups. So this is on my assignments page, and these things are in groups. It has to do with the grading book because these are weighted. So you can see that if I added 20% plus 40 plus 20 plus 20, I teach accounting, that's 100%. So all of the assignments, right, and there's assignments under each of these groups, will add up to 100% of their grade. Some of these have like several, I don't know, there might be like 30 or 40 assignments under this particular one. And instead of like always extending due dates and so on and so forth, I will just create a rule that says drop the lowest score. So I do that on my assignments screen, and I'm going to show you that. So I'm going to pause for a second. So here's my assignments. This is under my assignments tab. Okay, so here you can see I've got my 20%, my 40%, 20%, 20%, so on and so forth. Okay, so the reason I do this is because sometimes during a semester, I may have 10 activities under participation. Sometimes I'll have 15, 16, 13, whatever. It depends on how my semester is going and how my students are doing. I may have more or less over here, but it doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter if one is worth 1 point or 100%. The whole percentage of my activities under this will equal 20% of their grade. So you can see I also have the rule here. So I went over here to edit, and here's where you can drop the lowest first score, second, you can drop all the score. I don't know, but I'm just going to drop their lowest score. Okay. And you can also put, well, you can drop the lowest score, but never drop this one particular thing, and it'll bring them. Maybe don't drop the syllabus quiz, for example. Everything else is up for grabs, but don't drop that one. Okay. And here's where I set my percentage of how much that is worth. Okay, so that's how that rule comes about. All right. And the next thing I have is the default grade. So I use publisher content, like I'll use McGraw-Hill's Connect assignments for homework and quizzes and exams. I could use Pearson's My Accounting Lab. There's a number of, publishers out there that will have homework assignments and so on and so forth. And those can automatically get slurped into my grade book. So although I was having a conversation during the workshop, and sometimes I think even if you have a Canvas assignment, it would be a good idea to do this. So you'll want to make sure that you set the default grade to 0, and you'll do this after the assignment due date has passed. And I'm going to explain to you why this is. So let's say you have 10 assignments in your class and they're each worth 100 points. So that would be 1,000 points, right? Then you've got this one student and they've completed 2 out of the 10 assignments and they got 100% on each of them. So far they have, 200 points, right? Just as an example. So if you do not set the default grade to 0 in the Canvas gradebook, it will show that the student's overall score is 100%. The student will see this, you will see this, they will have 100%, even though they've only done 2 out of the 10 assignments, right? This doesn't seem quite right. So once you set the default, basically what Canvas is doing is it's ignoring the assignment altogether for that student that didn't do it. It doesn't count against them. So the student looks like they got an A, right? Well, I learned this the hard way. So what you really have to do is set the default grade to 0, and then the accurate grade will actually be, for this student, will be 20%, which really means instead of getting an A, they're getting an F because they only completed 2 out of the 10 assignments. So they have 20 or 200 out of 1,000 points, or 20%, right? So they're not doing so great. So they'll see that they have an F. But they won't see this. They'll see they have an A if you haven't set that default grade to 0. So how do you do that? Well, you come over to your grade book, and then for each of the assignments, then you'll click the 3 dots. So if you hover over this assignment, you can click those 3 dots, and then this brings up this following menu over here, and you'll click the Set Default Grade. And then once you click the set the default grade, it'll bring up this box right here, and you'll just type in a 0 in this big box right here. Now, please do not select this box, because any grades that students have entered for that particular assignment will go to a 0, which would override their grade if you check that box. So don't check that box for this particular example, right? Just put the 0 there, click the set default grade, and you're good to go. All right, what else do I know? Okay, this is something that I do too, is that when you click these 3 dots on the total thing, you can sort by either low to high or high to low. Now, how do I use this? Well, throughout the semester, I'll be sorting my grade book all the time by this low to high to find out who is not doing well in my class, so that I can reach out to them and kind of give them a shout and say, hey, is there anything I can do to support you, or whatever, right? And sometimes I'll sort it by high to low, and then I'll find out who's doing really well in my class, and maybe I'll try to convince them to become an accounting major, right? So that's how I use those. But I'm constantly throughout the semester looking at this. Just comes in really handy for me to find out who's maybe struggling a little bit in my class. Okay, so another thing that I use is under the view notes. You can see that I've done this, and I have a couple of note columns here. So that's how you do it. So you'll click the view, click the notes. These notes columns will appear, and they're just free form text. You can put anything in here. You're the only one that sees it. Your students will not see this, but I sometimes will create a survey at the beginning of class, and I'll ask them a little bit about themselves. And if they tell me something like, hey, I'm a single parent, or my internet's slow, or I'm a vet, whatever it is, I'll just type a little thing in here just to kind of get to know them a little bit, and just to remind me who they are. It's just my way of kind of being a little personal with my students, so I know who they are. All right, so that's the notes section. So it just highlights them. All right, the last thing well, maybe one of the last things is I'm gonna say there's a feature called Message Students Who. So in your gradebook, again, you use these 3 dots that appear when you hover over it. You can go to the Message Students Who, and the options you have are message students who haven't submitted the assignment, who haven't been graded, who have scored less than, X percent or X amount of points or whatever, or maybe scored more than. So you can use this however you want. The students will get an individual email from you. They won't know who else was on the list, but maybe if you have students that scored less than 50% on an assignment, you can, message them and say, hey, what's up? Do you need some help or whatever? Or you could say scored more than 90%, and you could say, hey, great job on the, on the last exam, whatever you want. But that's a way for you to blanket email students using a certain criteria. Okay, in my sessions today, I had some questions about extra credit. So there is a way for you to award extra credit to your students by using an assignment and just giving it 0 points as the, how many points are possible for the assignment, and then entering in an amount of points on top of 0, right? And that will give them extra credit. So I created a YouTube video. So when you get this PowerPoint, you can click here and it will take you to my YouTube video where I show you how to do that extra credit. So this is me. It's a very short video, but I give you a demonstration of how to do that. So that is the end of my presentation, and I hope you learned something.